Tucson is a very accepting community, and I want to talk about that a little bit. And also, you brought in a map that shows how widespread the laws are preventing discrimination. So can we, okay.
Yeah, sure. If you look at the map, those areas in blue are states, 12 right now in number, and other jurisdictions. There's about 100 in the United States where they have passed laws or ordinances that specifically protect transgender people against discrimination in employment, public accommodations, and housing. Now, the ones in kind of the mustard color are states where there's been a court or some administrative organization has said that gender identity falls within the definition of either sex or, interestingly enough, disability. If you look at the map, of course, at Arizona, there's only one blue dot, and that is Tucson. It is the only jurisdiction in the state that has those protections within its city limits.
And why do you think that Tucson is so accepting or progressive?
You know, I moderated a town hall a couple weeks ago with members of the city council, the president of the university, and other leaders. And, you know, we don't have a real good answer why it is. Tucson and southern Arizona in general has primarily been a very open and society willing to listen to other points of view before moving off and saying, you know, that's the way it is and we don't want to change. So we've been very fortunate in Tucson. It's one of the actually strongest communities in the United States.
Well, that's nice to know. Yeah. Nice to know. Now, Michael, when we talked last, you had mentioned that one of the big problems is access to medical care and insurance. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. Because, well, for one thing, doctors don't get medical, they don't get transgender medicine in their schools, you know, when they're going to medical school. So there's not, just like the rest of the world, there's not a lot of knowledge about transgender people and what our needs are and things. So, and doctors are human beings. They discriminate, they have opinions, and there's lots of reasons why transgender people don't feel safe just even going to the doctor for even just simple things. But then you put in things like health insurance. Almost all health insurance policies until very recently have categorically excluded anything related to gender transition, whether it be hormones, surgeries, or whatever. But it's even trickled down into things like if you've had something, if you're on hormones and that's known that you're on hormones, then they can like pin other things that come up in your health to the fact that you transitioned, and so therefore they're not even going to treat simple things like blood tests for liver disease or things like that. And another huge issue is that so many transgender people are discriminated against in employment that they're either unemployed or they're way underemployed and they don't have insurance. I mean, that's pretty common with a lot of folks, but transgender people in particular, I think we did a survey in Tucson about 2 years ago, and about 25% of the population that responded said that they were either unemployed or underemployed, and very few of them had any insurance at all.
How many transgender people in the United States? Do you have any estimate, or?
Well, unfortunately, it's not one of those boxes on the census form that you get to fill out. So it's very inaccurate. There's been a lot of different estimations, ranging from, say, 1 in 1,000 to 1 in 50,000. You know, so you run those numbers. There's quite a few across the United States. Many people are, you know, have the opportunity, like Michael and I, that we could indeed live stealth and move to a new community, start a new life, know and know our past history. There's quite a few people like that around the country. And then, you know, it's a question about how far do you go? Do you include people who are just part-time cross-dressers? Do you include, so, I mean, the number is quite large.
In the millions, I'd say.
Okay. Once you changed your genders, did your perspective of the world change at all?
Well, it was kind of interesting. I think there were definitely some things that, as I had access as a male in our society, that all of a sudden I lost that access. It may have been a meeting at work where all the participants were male and talked and used words and phraseology in one method, and then when I was there as a woman, they changed what they would say. So there were some perspectives that changed in that regard. Certainly there's some physical things that changed. I thought it was kind of interesting that my hearing got better. I actually found different frequencies that I could hear that I wasn't able to hear before. Strictly from hormonal use, I found that the constant chatter in my head kind of quieted down. And so there were some things that I took more joy in that I probably overlooked or rushed by in the past.
Yeah, and I actually, we'd never talked about that, but I've had exactly the opposite experience with the hearing. It's like my hearing's gotten worse. I didn't necessarily relate it to transition. I thought I was just getting older.
Or, well, there may be something about those guys that just don't hear what the women are saying.
I think most women will agree with that men just don't listen, right?
Well, my husband, his comeback is always, if I had to listen to everything you say, I wouldn't have room for a thought of my own. So, ever a moment of nostalgia or a sense of loss for your gender? Previous gender?
Yeah, not per se. You know, it's kind of interesting. I think, you know, when I dream at night, you know, still some of my dreams are back when I was male, or project myself a male. And most of the dreams nowadays, you know, I see myself as female. There are certainly some people that were in my life that aren't anymore, and I do miss them.
Mm-hmm. How about you, Michael?
Not so much. No, I'm very happy. I mean, if I have regrets about anything, it's not transitioning sooner.
Oh, really? And how old were you?
I was 35, 36. Yeah.
And how old were you, Amanda?
I was 39.
Is that an average age? Or again, you don't know this?
No, I don't really think so. I think, I mean, when I was growing up, we had, you know, a couple of role models. I had Christine Jorgensen and I had Renee Richards, and that's all you ever heard about. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't really until, you know, I was in my late 30s that the internet came out, and all of a sudden I found out that there were so many more. Mm-hmm. And I think that we see nowadays people transitioning in their teens.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. We have almost run out of time.
Wow.
Is there anything both of you would like to say to the audience about this issue?
Well, if there was one thing I'd like to tell people is that we're still in an education mode. There's still a lot to be learned in the general public about what transgender people are, what's important, what are the issues. I think it was Stephen Covey said that before you can be understood, you need to understand. Mm-hmm. And through Wingspan and some of the related organizations, we do trainings at universities and colleges, mm-hmm. and I really encourage people to sign up for those.
My message is more to the gay and lesbian community and around inclusion in legislation and stuff like that. What they need to remember is that most discrimination against gay and lesbian people happens about their gender expression. It's not about who they're sleeping with, it's how they look. Mm-hmm. You know, people lose their jobs because they're too effeminate or they're too masculine if they're female, and things along those lines. So you've got to remember that when you're putting these legislations together, and you can't exclude gender identity or gender expression. It's very important to leave it in there.
Amanda Simpson, thank you very much. Michael Woodward, pleasure to have you both on the show, and I want to leave the audience, who I want to also thank for joining us, with the words of Anais Nin, the author. Two different quotes of hers, but they fit together quite well. Everyone dies, but not everyone lives. Live your life in a way that makes you happy and proud. It takes courage to push yourself to places that you've never been before, to test your limits, to break through barriers. And then she said, and the day came when the risk it took to remain tight inside the bud was more painful than the risk it took to blossom.
I love that one.
Very nice.
Thanks again so much. It goes by fast, doesn't it?